I died, and the Cultivation family only rose up. Introduction. www.zhaoxuyuan.com. After my death, I awakened Chen Xuanmo, the golden finger walker, and deceived a wife to reproduce the Cultivation family. After death, I became the ancestor of the heroic spirit, absorbing purple qi to transform into qi and protect the family, supporting the healthy growth of future generations. From then on, the strength led the flying family. On the occasion of a decisive battle between a certain descendant and others, our ancestors will give you a few purple auras to pick up https://www.zhaoxuyuan.com. Chapter 1. Chen Xuanmo's life is like walking on thin ice. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, Dawu State. Hedong County, Sanyi Mountain. This mountain is tall and steep, with peaks resembling divine weapons and sharp weapons, pointing straight towards the sky. Between the mountainside, there is a platform that has been flattened like a mirror by mysterious forces, and the blue stones shine like jade, known as the Blue Jade Cliff. On this Blue Jade Cliff stands the main residence of the Chen family of Sanyi, a renowned immortal family in Hedong County. This mansion is built on a natural spiritual vein, and its architectural complex is magnificent, as if connected to heaven and earth. Clouds and mist surround it, adding a touch of mystery and majesty. Inside the master's residence. Xuanmo Pavilion. A withered old man with white beard and hair sat cross-legged on a cattail. His mind flashed with life experiences one by one. I, Chen Xuanmo, have been walking on thin ice all my life. At the age of 18, carrying a crystal bead that was said to be a transit bead, he traveled to a world similar to ancient China. After wandering around for 2 years and earning some primitive funds, I was about to roll up my sleeves and do a big job. By chance, I found out that there really is a way to immortality in this world, so I resolutely decided to search for immortality and ask. After putting in a lot of effort, at the age of 25, he finally became a disciple of the Jinyuan sect and became an outsider. However, the cultivation ability of the four spirit roots was not outstanding, and coupled with being too old, the path to cultivation was difficult. Fortunately, as a traveler, Chen Xuanmo had a relatively broad perspective and active thinking. With various clever methods, perseverance, and small luck, he finally successfully entered the period of building the foundation at the age of 73. At the age of 90, I knew that I had no hope of achieving a pill in this life, so I tricked a naive girl with the qualification of 5 spirit roots into getting married. From then on, I opened branches and scattered leaves, and established my own cultivation family. At the age of 123, he moved with his family to Qingyu Cliff in Sanyi Mountain and began building his own family's main residence. At the age of 163, he broke through to the late stage of foundation construction, surpassing his peers and making the family prosperous. At the age of 176, my wife passed away, but I did not continue playing. At the age of 197, The old man on the futon suddenly closed his eyes, his head drooped, his vitality cut off, and his breath was completely gone. He is dead. Father. A man kneeling on the ground below the futon suddenly changed his complexion and burst into tears. Behind him, there were also immediate shouts coming from both sides. Grandpa. Grandfather. Ancestor. In an instant, both inside and outside the Xuanmo pavilion were filled with mournful cries, one after another. Qingyu Cliff, at the foot of the mountain. A winding upward path leads straight to the clouds. Along the way, the mountain streams are lush with trees, and the streams babble. Strange flowers, plants, and rare animals can be seen everywhere. On this steep mountain road, a group of people dressed in strange clothes were showing their abilities and hurriedly rushing to the main residence of the Chen family. Among them, a young man lifted his breath and leaped forward, each time as if a big bird had spread its wings, flying lightly for 7 or 8 zhang, more agile than wild apes in the mountain stream. On the other side, an old woman leaning on a cane was holding the hand of a little girl. Her step seemed casual, but every step she took seemed to shrink to an inch, and in an instant, she came more than 10 feet ahead. There was also a young girl kneeling on a kite-like paper kite, skillfully controlling it, flapping her wings and circling up the mountain road. As everyone was about to arrive at Chen's main residence, they suddenly stopped and carefully organized their appearance before walking towards the mountain gate with a mournful expression. At this moment, a white spiritual tent had already been erected in front of the main gate of the Chen family, with soul-summoning flags fluttering in the wind and white cloth swaying and displaying. Several women, dressed in plain clothes and described as miserable, knelt in front of the brazier, burning paper money, choking and sobbing one after another. There is another pair of black and white couplets hanging on both sides of the mountain gate. Inscription: The sorrowful spirit of a wise man drives away on a crane, and the mournful voice spreads to the 9 heavens. The legacy of ancestral virtues shines on future generations, inheriting family traditions and preserving them in the world. Next to the mourning shed, stood several men dressed in mourning clothes. The leader was a burly old man with graying temples, who appeared to be around 60 or 70 years old. He was Chen Ningtai, the young chieftain of the Chen family in Tsangyi. At this moment, he looked tired, his face darkened, and there was a thick sadness hidden in his eyes. It is obvious that the death of his father Qin Xuanmo has dealt him a great blow. However, even so, when someone went up the mountain to offer condolences, he still forced himself and led his tribe forward, bowing deeply to the visitors. His throat rolled twice, but he choked up and lost his voice. "How dare you trouble Senior Ningtai to personally come and greet me?" Among the guests, an old man with a fairy-like demeanor was busy and deeply returning his greetings. The rest of the guests were all in a state of panic and fear, as if they were flattered and quickly bowed back. The deceased has passed away, and we still hope that the founder of Ningtai will mourn. Master Xuanmo, keep going. Wu Xuanmo Ancestor. The guests who came to offer condolences expressed their grief for the immortal passing of Senior Qin Xuanmo in various ways. At this very moment, a brilliant firelight suddenly broke through the sky, as if a meteor was chasing the moon, falling straight in front of the mountain gate of Chen's main residence. The firelight gradually dissipated and turned into a red talisman, falling gracefully in the thin flames and finally falling steadily into the palm of a majestic old man. This old man has a burly figure, red hair and red eyebrows, carrying both hands on his back, his eyes shining brightly, and he exudes a majestic aura between glances. The guests were immediately silent when they saw the visitor, but their hearts were filled with suspicion and uncertainty. This is the Chichio ancestor of the Zheng family in Lingbei. Isn't it true that his family has always been at odds with Xuanmo ancestor, and now he has personally come to offer condolences? Upon seeing this, Chen Ningtai quickly bowed to the guests and said, "Ladies and gentlemen, Chen, please leave first and stay with me for a while." He turned around and solemnly instructed a middle-aged man behind him, "Dao Ling, take good care of the guests and don't miss the etiquette." "Yes, father." Chen Dao Ling, who had a dignified and elegant appearance, respectfully responded, and politely exchanged a few words with the guests before leading them into the mountain gate and inviting servants from other branches, treating them well. On the other side, Chen Ningtai greeted the Chichio ancestor of the Zheng family and politely saluted, "Thank you very much, brother Zheng. I have come to see off my father for the last journey." The eyes of elder Chichio were slightly complicated, and his mouth opened and closed several times before finally turning into a light sigh. "Alas, brother Ningtai, I will mourn and change." The old ghost Xuanmo, whether calculating or using force, suppressed him for a lifetime. He always curses Xuanmo old ghost to ascend to heaven as soon as possible in secret. I really saw that Qin Xuanmo was dead, and I couldn't help but feel a bit sad about the rabbit's death. Perhaps in less than 20 or 30 years, their prosperous generation will all come to an end one by one. Just as Chen Ningtai was entertaining his distinguished guests, another canoe with a black canopy sailed over in the clear sky. It broke through the clouds and slowly drifted down in front of the Chen family mountain gate. The rolling shutter of the Wupeng boat was lifted, and an extraordinary old man in splendid attire emerged from it, followed by several young people behind him. Why did the old ghost of Guanling personally come to offer condolences? Father Chichio squinted his eyes slightly. Within a 1,000-mile radius of the southern 5 guards in Hedong County, there are currently 3 major immortal cultivation families. The Chen family of Cangyi, the Jing family of Lingbei, and the Zhao family of Nanyue. Among them, the Chen family of Cangyi has the shallowest cultural heritage, but also the strongest rise. There are intricate relationships between the 3 major families and the Yunyang sect, the sect of cultivating immortals. Therefore, they have both competitive relationships and inevitable alliances and cooperation in various aspects, resulting in relatively complex relationships. Upon seeing the situation, Chen Ningtai immediately accused the old ancestor of Chichio and hurriedly went to welcome the old ancestor of Guangling, the Zhao family of Nanyue. As a result, guests from all walks of life rushed to offer condolences one after another, including the famous foundation building period cultivator who shook the area. On the 3rd day, a flying carriage pulled by a 3rd order spirit bird appeared in the sky, and it turned out that the renowned inner gate attendant, Wang Jiqing, was sent by the Yunyang sect to offer condolences. This shows that the sect also attaches great importance to the death of Chen Xuanmo. So, the Chen family was busy for several more days. On the 6th day of the mourning period, the relatives of the guests who offered condolences from all directions gradually dispersed. However, the Chen clan still cannot rest. Until the first 7. Ancestral Hall. As the ancestral hall of the Chen family, the ancestral hall is located at the end of the entire Chen family's main residence, surrounded by pine and cypress trees, with a faint sandalwood fragrance spreading, appearing quiet and peaceful. Due to the rise of the Chen family in the Cangyi region, which has only lasted for a few decades, Chen Xuanmo was originally the founder of the Chen family. Therefore, although the ancestral hall is grand, the main hall still has sparse plaques when looking for the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com. Unlike ancient China, this world temple also houses female tablets, as there are also many female cultivators. The top tablet currently only enshrines Yao Qiuping, the first-generation mother of the Chen family. At this point, Chen Ningtai, a young chieftain with white temples, held the tablet of his father Chen Xuanmo and kowtowed 3 steps at a time, offering the tablet to the top. He also placed Chen Xuanmo's intermediate spiritual artifact, the Xuanmo spirit sword, at the back of the tablet. At the same time, he kept reciting, "Please return your father's spirit to his throne." Behind him, men, women, and people of all ages were kneeling on the ground, reciting, "Please return to your position, the heroic spirit of our ancestors." Amidst the sound of heroic spirits returning home, suddenly, the Xuanmo spirit sword behind the tablet trembled slightly imperceptibly, and then a soft light appeared. But all members of the Chen clan were in a kneeling state, and no one noticed this scene. Boom! Chen Xuanmo felt a momentary explosion in his mind and suddenly became clear-headed. He looked around and felt as if he was in a sealed sphere. Unable to leave, but able to see distorted external light through the crystal walls of the sphere. Outside the crystal wall, it seemed like a temple he had personally built, with dozens of filial sons and grandchildren kneeling on the ground, reciting words such as the return of heroic spirits. What's going on here? Chen Xuanmo's heart was filled with suspicion and uncertainty. He, as an old monster who has lived for nearly 200 years, has never seen such a scene before. Didn't I die? Chen Xuanmo was stunned for a while. Yeah, isn't I already dead? Chapter 2. My Ancestor I Manifested. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. After pondering for a moment, Chen Xuanmo finally understood the current situation. He died but lived again. strictly speaking, he is not considered resurrected, but in a peculiar heroic state, attached to the precious pearl of the Xuanmo spirit sword. This intermediate spiritual sword was forged during the middle period of Chen Xuanmo's foundation construction. At that time, he collected materials and entrusted the Jinyuan sect alchemistry hall to refine spiritual swords, which cost a considerable contribution from the sect. In order to embed transport beads, he also left a groove at the end of the hilt. All along, the transport beads that accompanied him through time were in a colorless glass bead state, which did not bring him any welfare benefits. Chen Xuanmo inlays transport beads, originally intended to be kept as a memory. Unexpectedly, it was only after his death that the teleportation bead came into play, transforming him into a hero. Inside the ancestral hall. As the descendants of Chen Xuanmo continued to kneel and worship, it seemed that a certain resonance and connection had formed between them and the transfer beads. Slips of sparse purple air floated up from them, thrown into the Xuanmo spirit sword, and then gathered inside the transport pearl. Gradually, the purple qi inside the transfer bead condensed, 1 strand, 2 strands, 9 strands, 1 strand. The amount of purple energy that descendants can produce varies, with the eldest son Chen Ningtai kneeling at the front, emitting the strongest purple energy, followed by the youngest son Chen Ningzhua. The descendants kneeling at the back produce a thinner purple aura. At this point, Chen Xuanmo looked down at his children and grandchildren through the crystal wall of the transfer bead, and his heart was filled with emotions. He and his first wife Yao Qiuping gave birth to 4 sons and 3 daughters together. Those who are still alive now only have their eldest and youngest sons in front of them. Just between his size. The purple aura has stopped spreading, and a total of 70.80 threads have gathered inside the transport bead, emitting a faint purple light. The Xuanmo spirit sword also seemed to have been baptized, as if it had been slightly sublimated. At this point, the ritual also came to an end. Chen Ningtai, the eldest son, respectfully declared to heaven and earth and reported to his ancestors. With the support of his clan, he officially succeeded as the second-generation head of the Chen family in Xianxia. After finishing the ceremony, some women, children, and young people have left the temple one after another. The second and third generation men with relatively higher generations were left by the new head of the family to hold the first family meeting in the ancestral hall. As there are only 7 eligible individuals in total, it appears somewhat sparse. The new head of the family, Chen Ningtai, sat at the top, while the others took their seats according to their seniority. Among them, Chen Daohuan, the youngest and only in his 20s, the third-generation son of the fourth wife, is the last to accompany. Cough. Chen Ningtai cleared his throat and, seeing everyone looking over, spoke in a serious and deep voice, "Dear family members, our old master has passed away. What kind of difficulties will our Xianxia Chen family face next? I don't need to say anything more, do I?" Everyone had different expressions. The atmosphere inside the ancestral hall suddenly became serious and heavy. Especially Chen Ningzhua, the fourth in command, showed a look of shame on his face. "It's all my fault for not being able to build the foundation successfully. Otherwise, our family would have built a double foundation. Even if we didn't have the same glory as our father at the time, we could still barely maintain the current situation." He was sent to the Jinyuan sect from a young age and was trained by both the sect and family resources. At the age of less than 70, he reached the peak of his qi refining period. Afterwards, Chen Xuanmo felt that the deadline was approaching and used his connections and a large amount of family wealth to win him a foundation-building pill. As a result, Chen Ningzhua's attempt to build the foundation failed, resulting in all investments being wasted. "Sigh forth, don't blame yourself too much," Chen Ningtai sighed and comforted. "With the 4 spiritual roots like us, even if all the conditions are perfect and there are foundation-building pills to cooperate with, building a foundation is only 60.7% guaranteed." That being said, both brothers had a somewhat gloomy expression, and failure was inevitable, but neither of them wanted it to happen to them. A cultivation family like the Chen family, any time they build a foundation, it will inevitably require the entire family to save for a long time. Once they fail, it will be a painful and even change the family's rise and fall. Father, fourth uncle. Chen Daoling, the eldest grandson of the family, arched his hand and said, "Success or failure is fate. The top priority is to discuss the family's future development policy and corresponding strategies." Chen Ningtai's face darkened and he said in a deep voice, "Before my father passed away, he had already made an explanation. We can make appropriate and necessary concessions regarding the profit ratio of the Shanfang city jointly opened with the Zhao and Jing families, as well as the border dispute interests with them." Once this statement is made, everyone's faces were a bit gloomy. Previously, Chen Ningzhua's failure in building the foundation had already injured the family's bones and muscles. If the interests of all parties were to be further reduced, it was feared that the family's finances would be stretched thin, leading to a fate of decline. "Being alive is the most important thing," Chen Ningtai said with a dignified expression. As a family head, the Zhao family of Nanyue and the Jing family of Lingbei ultimately belong to the same cultivation family as our Chen family under the rule of Yunyang sect, and they have a marriage relationship with each other. As long as we reduce the corresponding benefits according to our own strength and receive a portion of what we deserve, they will also be cautious about their appearance and not excessively engage in conflicts. Our main target for prevention this time is Linhai by Shi. As soon as the name was given, the atmosphere at the scene suddenly became lively. The Bai family in Linhai is different from the Jing family in Zhao, as they belong to the hostile faction of Wuxia. The Chen family of Canyi had a fierce development momentum in their early years. The founder of the mountain, Chen Xuanmo, had excellent strength and methods, causing the Bai family of Linhai to retreat step by step, and even their ancestors dared not let go of any more. It can be said that under the rule of the Chen family in Canyi, a small portion of the territory was bitten off from the Bai family. If it weren't for the high-level game between Yunyang sect and Wuxia, who exchanged other benefits for temporary peace, Chen Xuanmo would have had to break into the Bai family's lair with one sword per person. Now, Chen Xuanmo is dead. The Bai family in Linhai has a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for revenge. How could they let it go? Now let's talk about how to deal with the retaliation of the Bai family, Chen Ningtai said in a deep voice. Let me first explain some of my father's instructions before his death, and everyone will start to act according to the plan. Just as Chen Ningtai and his team were having a meeting, Chen Xuanmo had already figured out some clever uses of the teleportation beads and purple qi. After consuming a trace of purple qi, he escaped from the teleportation beads. After getting familiar with it for a while, he began to stroll around the temple. He first observed his own form through conscious detachment and found that his image had recovered to around the age of 18. Long lost young and handsome, extraordinary in martial arts, accompanied by his mood becoming more joyful and younger. Secondly, Chen Xuanmo discovered a significant difference between his heroic state and his ghost state. If it were in a ghostly state, his son Chen Ningtai, who was building the foundation, would naturally have sensed his spiritual body long ago. But right now, as he approached his eldest son Chen Ningtai, the other party was completely unaware and continued to talk incessantly. He realized for the first time that his quiet eldest son could speak so well. However, Chen Xuanmo was more aware of the difficulties faced by the family than anyone else and had no interest in listening to his sons and grandchildren hold family meetings and talk about those cliché issues. In a moment of thought, Chen Xuanmo appeared outside the ancestral hall. He is ready to stroll around and take a look at the family he has devoted his whole life to running from another perspective. After all, when he was alive, his accumulated power was very strong. His descendants were obedient in front of him. Walking along the spacious slate road outside the ancestral hall, passing through a secluded area of Songbalan, one can finally be considered completely out of the scope of the ancestral hall. The front also gradually becomes lively, with side clans and servants appearing one after another. Soon, Chen Xuanmo encountered the first target object. Chen Jinyuan, one of the fifth great-grandchildren of the fourth generation Jing generation. Chen Jinyuan is the third son of Chen Daoling, the eldest grandson of Changfang. His mother is Zhao Mengyan, the legitimate daughter of the Zhao family in Nanyue. I am 19 years old, with a slender figure and a handsome appearance. There are 5 or 6 similarities in appearance and Chen Xuanmo's current youthful image. He is truly a charming young man. At this moment, the morning has ended. Chen Jinyuan took off his linen clothes and switched back to the cultivator's strength suit. But his eyes still had a hint of sadness and sorrow, never completely detached from the grief of his great-grandfather's death. A good child with filial piety. Chen Xuanmo was quite satisfied with this. He remembered the mysterious purple aura in the teleportation bead. Based on his past and present life experiences, since it was produced during the family's ancestral worship, it is likely to be fulfilled by the family's descendants. He decided to try other wonderful uses of purple qi. For safety reasons, he first found a servant to try the depth and summoned a hint of purple air from the Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com to float above the servant's head. The purple qi entered the servant's body, but in an instant, it resisted and repelled itself. Helpless. Chen Xuanmo could only directly attack Chen Jinyuan, and a hint of purple energy entered his body. This time, he did not resist and escaped, but he showed no reaction like a mud ox falling into the sea. Is it a decrease in quantity? Chen Xuanmo frowned and tried again, increasing the purple energy output by 2 threads, 5 threads. Until it reached the 10th thread, and finally a wonderful change occurred. A mysterious aura circulated within the body of his great-grandson Chen Jinyuan, and then gathered at the imprint of his eyebrows, illuminating a small purple light. It's done. Chen Xuanmo was slightly pleased that the effect of purple qi was indeed related to his bloodline offspring. However, the specific effect is still unclear and needs to be observed and verified. At this very moment, another servant quickly ran up to Chen Jinyuan, with an ambiguous expression on his face. Master Jinyuan, Miss Xianxia entrusted the gatekeeper to deliver a message to you, saying that she invited you to go to the back mountain for a chat. Who? Chen Jinyuan looked inexplicable. Miss Xianxia, it's the pretty nun who greeted you a few days ago and flirted with you. It turned out to be the wild cultivator who came to eat and drink, but she was indeed quite beautiful, Chen Jinyuan recalled slightly. What did she come to me for? What else can I do? The servant laughed even more lewdly. It must be because I saw that young Master Jinyuan came from a noble family and was extraordinary in martial arts, which moved my heart. Good guy. Chen Xuanmo exclaimed in his heart, good guy. This usually well-behaved and sensible great-grandson actually hooked up with Miss Yi Xiu at his Chen Xuanmo funeral. Let's not have this great-grandson, shall we? In Chapter 3, Chen Xuanmo, surprisingly lived like a golden finger. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, absurd. Chen Jinyuan kicked him, perhaps it's because the girl has something important to attend to. Don't rely on her innocence. The servant didn't dodge and got a hard kick. He patted his buttocks calmly and smiled playfully, right, Xianxia Fairy must have encountered some difficulties. Please help to uphold justice, young master. These servants in the Chen family, although not possessing the spiritual roots to cultivate immortality, are all elites who have been rigorously screened and trained since childhood. Their martial arts skills are enough to be called martial arts masters in the mortal world. However, compared to cultivators, these so-called martial arts masters appear to be overshadowed. The first layer of the cultivation stage for immortals requires the ability to introduce qi into the body, connect the ren and du meridians, and bridge the 2 bridges of heaven and earth, in order to refine a mouthful of innate spiritual energy. And the highest realm of ordinary martial arts, the innate realm, is only the first level of entry in the eyes of cultivators. Even more cruelly, even though some ordinary people have excellent intelligence, without spiritual roots, the innate spiritual energy they have finally cultivated is like a rootless duckweed that is difficult to maintain. It's even more difficult to take another step forward. There is nothing more cruel than this in the world of immortality. Chen Jinyuan in this room didn't pay any attention to the servant anymore, but went straight out of the mountain gate. After leaving the range of the clan protection array, I casually took a move. A green leaf-shaped artifact flew out of the storage bag. This magical tool circled around him, flickering with a green spiritual light, and then hovered steadily under his feet. This is a common flying tool called the spirit leaf, which is very suitable for cultivators during the qi refining period. It's just that the price is not cheap, it's not affordable for casual repairs. Even the younger generation in the Chen family are not worthy of Lingya. Chen Jinyuan lightly jumped onto the spiritual leaf, and with a thought, the spiritual leaf immediately took off and galloped forward. Although its speed is not very fast and it cannot fly high, it is very flexible in its movements and twists, flying along the mountain path branch and carrying its owner towards the back mountain direction. During this process, Xuanmo was so angry that he wanted to crawl out of the coffin. He angrily carried his hands on his back and closely followed his great-grandson, preparing to explore the truth. However, he soon realized that in his heroic state, the further away he was from the main ancestral hall, the slower and more sluggish his movements became. Fortunately, the back mountain was not far from Chen's main residence, and Xuanmo was barely able to reach and start his activities. Back mountain. A young girl sat lightly on a paper kite, her dress fluttering in the wind like a fairy. However, her delicate face was covered in melancholy, muttering while cheering for herself. Xianxia, you must be able to do it. Chen Jinyuan looked silly and easy to talk at first glance. When she saw Chen Jinyuan flying over with her spiritual leaves, her beautiful face squeezed out a smile of effort, but not too sincere. She controlled the paper kite and walked forward. Unlike the smooth flight of Lingya, the paper kite makes a creaking sound, as if protesting against its unbearable burden, giving people a feeling that it may break apart at any time. "Hello Mr. Chen," Xianxia sweetly greeted her with a clear and pleasant voice. "Miss Xianxia, why did you meet with Chen?" Chen Jinyuan lightly jumped down from the spiritual leaf, his movements were graceful and free. With a casual finger, the spiritual leaf transformed into a green light again and threw itself into the storage bag at his waist. A set of movements that flow smoothly, showcasing the demeanor of a noble young master. Ha! Chen Xuanmo, who had been following to find fault, paid attention to the girl and found that she was not simple. Judging from her appearance, which was only around 20, her aura had already reached the 4th level of the qi refining period. This belongs to the mid-term category of gas refining, reaching the 2nd stage of the 3 stages of gas refining. Lingquan. In ancient times, the qi refining period in this world was only divided into 3 realms, namely Xianxia, Lingquan, and Qifu, corresponding to modern qi refining periods of 1 to 3 levels, 4 to 6 levels, and 7 to 9 levels, respectively. Each of these 3 realms has a bottleneck, but once the bottleneck is broken, the state will transform and the strength will also advance rapidly. This girl, in terms of qualifications, is quite similar to Jinyuan Kid. After all, Chen Jinyuan also has the 4 spiritual roots qualification, reaching the peak of the 3rd layer of gas refining at the age of only 19. For a while, Chen Xuanmo has shown a bit more interest in this Xianxian girl, if she and Jinyuan Kid make up a pair. Unexpectedly, her luck exploded and she gave birth to a child with 3 spiritual roots. Isn't Chen making a big profit? "Chen Gongzi," said Miss Xianxian with a smile that was still trying to please her, "my name is Wang Xianxian. I rented a shop in our city of Xishan and opened a magic tool repair shop. Magic tool maintenance. Just rely on you." Chen Jinyuan looked at her intently, looking up and down with a hint of suspicion, and said, "Tell me the key point." Cough cough, it's just that business hasn't been doing well lately, and the rent has been rising sharply. Wu the local manager said, if I can't pay the rent anymore, I'll be driven away. Xianxia pretended to be pitiful and even sobbed a few times. I can't be the master of the operation of the local market, Jinyuan frowned and waved his hand. Xianxia City is a joint venture of the Chen, Zheng, and Zhao clans. Although the Chen clan currently holds 40% of the profits, his great-grandfather has died, and it is difficult to say what will happen next. Moreover, even if his great-grandfather did not die, Chen Jinyuan was not qualified to intervene in the operation of the Fang market. No, I dare not ask Mr. Chen to waive the rent. Xianxia smiled awkwardly and leaned forward, lowering her voice mysteriously. Actually, I am running a project and investing too much money in the early stages, which caused economic difficulties. Chen Jinyuan was curious and asked, what project? Xianxia said solemnly in a low voice, the puppet imitation project in the middle of the gas refining period. Chen Jinyuan's face suddenly turned black. However, Xianxia still managed himself and excitedly introduced, now that this project has reached the most critical moment, it is about to succeed. 100 spirit stones, as long as Mr. Chen invests in 100 spirit stones, I will give you 1%, no, 2% of the shares. Really? Chen Jinyuan twitched the corner of his eye and his face was slightly excited. Why did Miss Xianxia come to me alone, Chen Jinyuan, for such a great project? That's not because Lord Chen is young and promising, with a bright future ahead. Xianxia patted his chest seriously and said, Xianxia, don't take everyone's money. I think you think I'm the foolish son of a great cultivator. I'm foolish, but I have a lot of money, right? Chen Jinyuan laughed angrily. He, the puppet is imitated, and it's still in the middle stage of qi refining. Anyway, it's just bragging. Why don't you say you're imitating the foundation building puppet? I also have remnants of the foundation puppet, Xianxia said with an innocent blink, but it's too early to say. At least I'll have to wait until I reach the foundation building period before I have the opportunity to develop it. Chen Jinyuan smiled and turned his head before leaving. The girl's project is too big, and I, Chen Jinyuan, have limited wealth and fortune, but I don't have the fate or appetite to eat it. Goodbye. As he spoke, he walked back without looking back and casually released the flying magic weapon Lingya. Seeing this scene, Xuanmo couldn't help but burst into laughter. My great-grandson may be a bit obedient and honest, but he is not too foolish. And Xianxia's eloquent ability also made him, the Xuanmo ancestor, feel quite nostalgic. Back then, when he was young, he was extremely poor and relied on his eloquent tongue to deceive around, ultimately laying the foundation for today. Zhaozuiyuan.com Xianxia's face was full of disappointment. She thought she could take advantage of Qin Xuanmo's passing to infiltrate the Qin family's main residence and find a wealthy tycoon to invest in her project. For this, she pretended to cry a few times at the mountain gate and forced out a few tears. But who would have thought that the great-grandson of the Qin family would be so unruly? Did Xianxia encounter a fake immortal from the 4th generation? Just as Chen Jinyuan was preparing to step onto Lingya and stay away from this wild cultivator, he suddenly caught a glimpse of a delicate brocade bag in the grass crevice between the stones at his feet. His heart twitched slightly, and as he raised his hand, a spiritual power shot out, pulling away the weeds around him. The brocade-colored bag suddenly exposed. It's actually a storage bag. This low-grade storage bag has no divine sense sacrificial refining mark and can be opened by anyone. Chen Jinyuan picked it up casually and opened the bag to explore inside. His careless expression on his face suddenly froze. The storage bag was filled with sparkling spirit stones. Roughly estimated, not less than 100 yuan. This Chen Jinyuan's pupils trembled and his eyes slowly widened. Is that all for picking up money now? Chen Xuanmo was also shocked. 100 spirit stones are not a big deal for him, the Xuanmo ancestor, but in the end, they are not small money either. What surprised him even more was that just as Jinyuan picked up the storage bag, the purple light on his forehead suddenly burst into nothingness with a bang. With a movement in my heart, I gained enlightenment. I see. The great-grandson picked up the spirit stone, most likely thanks to that wisp of purple energy. I, Chen Xuanmo, actually lived like a golden finger. Chapter 4. Appreciation for the Gift of Nature. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Xianxia's eyes widened like copper bells, with an incredulous expression on his face. Is this picking up money? Why is this? Why isn't Xianxia picking up money? Why didn't she see the storage bag in the grass even though she came first? She suspected her life as if she had been struck by lightning. Luck is really good. Jinyuan's eyebrows relaxed, energetic and radiant. Whoever picks up a huge sum of money will be happy. Thank you for the gift from nature. He stuffed the storage bag into his arms, ready to step onto the spiritual leaf and leave. Unexpectedly, the sleeve was pulled by someone. Jinyuan stared at Xianxia with a slight vigilance and said, "What's wrong? Miss Xianxia still wants to rob." He has no fear at all. This is the back mountain of Jinyuan Cliff. He only needs to send out a distress talisman, and his elders will soon arrive and turn the robbers into ashes. Wei Chu surged into Xianxia's heart, and she burst into tears with a "wow" sound. Crying so bitterly is much more sincere than mourning for Xuanmo ancestor. This is the spirit stone I found. Jinyuan remained unmoved and coldly pulled apart Xianxia's fingers. He stepped on the spiritual leaves and flew towards the main house, leaving only Xianxia to continue crying for her. Just kidding, although Chen's family and business are big, their expenses are also high. Especially before, in order to build the foundation for his fourth grandfather Chen Ningxue, family resources were even more scarce. 100 spirit stones is not a small amount. How could Jinyuan have invested in projects recklessly, causing money to float inexplicably? This scene made Xuanmo both relieved and angry. His great-grandson has a very clear mind and won't be easily fooled. But with such a cold and ruthless attitude towards other girls, this marriage is likely to be ruined. Xuanmo smiled and shook his head, carrying his hands on his back, gracefully flying back to the main residence. However, he no longer paid attention to Jinyuan kid, but instead wandered around. Jinyuan returned to the Chen family's main residence and walked straight towards his own yard. The Chen family has clan rules, and when they were young, they could live in the same courtyard with their parents. However, at the age of 14, they would be allocated a single courtyard to live their own lives. Jinyuan is 19 years old this year and has been living alone for 5 years. He walked all the way to the center of the main residence and saw a towering and spectacular tower standing in awe, with blue glazed tiles shining brightly in the sunlight, dazzling. This tower, named Mingdao Tower, is the location of the Chen clan school and Mingdao Academy. According to the rules of the clan, all children aged 8 to 16 must gather here. Diligent reading, diligent cultivation, to cultivate one's character and clear Dao heart. Although Jinyuan has already graduated for 3 years, every time he passes by Mingdao School, he involuntarily lowers his head and accelerates his steps to avoid being seen by the school's professors and scolding them. The less things that can happen, the more likely they are to happen. As Jinyuan hurried by, a majestic voice rang in his ear. "Jinyuan kid, stop." He stood stiffly on the spot, twisted his body, and saw the school professor Chen Daoan standing in front of the Mingdao building with his hands on his back, scrutinizing him with a scrutinizing gaze. Beside Chen Daoan, there was also a pair of boys and girls. The male child is Chen Jinyuan from the Jing generation, who ranks 11th. He is the younger brother of Chen Jinyuan's mother and compatriots. He is only 8 years old now and has a very handsome and upright appearance. However, looking at Chen Jinyuan in the eyes, there is inevitably a bit of schadenfreude. That girl looks about 10 years old, with a pink and jade carving appearance. At a young age, she is a beautiful embryo. She huddled behind Chen Jinyuan, with a somewhat uneasy expression, but couldn't help but curiously sneak a glance at Chen Jinyuan. At this point, Chen Jinyuan no longer had the calm and magnanimous demeanor of a nobleman in front of Wang Qianshan, his expression somewhat tense, and he struggled to show a pleasing smile. "Hello, second uncle." His second uncle Chen Daoan is the son of Chen Ninghui, the third wife of the Chen family. Chen Ninghui fought against others in his early years and died in his 30s, leaving behind Chen Daoan as his only son. In order to preserve the only child's bloodline of the third family, the family has never let Chen Daoan get involved in dangerous tasks, and even arranged a marriage for him early on to ensure the continuation of the family's incense. As a result, Chen Daoan took on the position of professor at the Chen school, dedicated to cultivating the younger generation within the clan. Although Chen Daoan appears to be middle-aged on the outside, he is actually nearing the age of 60. His cultivation is even more profound, reaching the 7th level of the Qi refining stage and entering the 3rd level of the Qi refining 3 realms. The Qi Mansion realm. In the entire Chen family, his cultivation ranks in the top 5. Chen Daoan, who looked like a middle-aged man, his face slightly darkened as he spoke, scolding him. "Jinyuan, you are the legitimate second lineage of the Changfang family, and you have the posture of the 4 spirit roots. You are the future pillar of our Chen family. But don't learn from those reckless young masters, which will delay your cultivation and tarnish the reputation of the Chen family in vain." Chen Jinyuan felt a thump in his heart and exclaimed, "Good guy." He went to the back mountain to meet Wang Qianshan, and the result quickly spread to the ears of the elders. "I will definitely clean up those 2 servants well when I come back." However, in the face of criticism from his elders, Chen Jinyuan could only agree and say, "What Uncle Heir taught is that Jinyuan will remember it in his heart." Chen Daoan has a strict academic discipline and extremely strict rules. During his 8 years at the Mingdao school, Chen Jinyuan received many disciplinary measures and reprimands. Chen Daoan's face had only slightly softened, and after a few words of encouragement, he asked him to give his younger siblings a good start before waving his hand to let him go. However, Chen Jinyuan did not leave immediately. Instead, he looked at his younger brother Chen Jinyuan, who was giggling. He frowned slightly and said, "Jinyuan, you are also the legitimate second lineage of the Long family, and also have the 4 spirit roots qualification. You are the future pillar of the family. Now that you are 8 years old and have entered school, you are no longer a child. Don't worry about feeding your mother every time you eat in the future." Chen Jinyuan's childish smile froze and she quickly panicked. The beautiful little girl beside her, covering her mouth and staring at him with bright eyes that she couldn't believe. And Professor Chen Daoan, the second uncle, furrowed his brow into a Chinese character and his gaze instantly became stern. "Huaner, come with me." Chen Jinyuan's small face was full of panic and turned white. "Uncle Heir, no, Professor, listen to my explanation, Before he could finish speaking, Chen Daoan grabbed his collar and led him into the school through the Shuyuan website www.zhaoshuyuan.com, his short legs kicking helplessly in the air. The beautiful little girl also followed the school with panicked footsteps. Chen Jinyuan smiled and waved goodbye to his younger brother. On the way, he remembered the origin of that beautiful little girl. Her name seems to be Yang Xiaoyu. A few days ago, during the mourning period of Grandfather Tai, she followed the young Lord Yang from the vassal family of Lingyao Mountain Villa to offer condolences. It is reasonable to say that she should have returned long ago. But now he has been left behind to study at the Chen clan school and is still going in and out with Jinyuan. Is it possible that you are preparing to be the child bride of Jinyuan? Chen Jinyuan smiled. Fortunately, the girl didn't match his age, otherwise tisk tsk. I will soon step into the grave of marriage. Shaking his head, he ignored it and went straight back to his own courtyard. His courtyard is located in the northeast corner of the main residence, along the path of the family's spiritual lineage, making it an excellent treasure trove. On the lintel of the courtyard gate, there are 3 characters engraved. Shiyunju. The font is Dragon Flying and Phoenix Dancing, which was personally inscribed by his great-grandfather Xuanmo. He hopes that his great-grandson will have good luck along the way of cultivating immortality. Jinyuan quickly walked into the courtyard and shouted, Xishuan, Fubao, you 2 dogs. Before he could finish speaking, he suddenly stopped and his heart trembled. In the courtyard, a burly middle-aged man stood with his hand down, staring at him with a dignified gaze. And the 2 clever servants, Xishuan and Fubao, stood by with their hands tied, their faces turned pale with fear and their legs trembled slightly. Dad. Jinyuan also had weak legs, a pale face, and some instability in standing. This person is Chen Daoling, the eldest grandson of Chen Xuanmo's eldest son. He is also Chen Jinyuan's biological father. Chapter 5. Jinyuan Forging Body Skill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, don't wait for my dad to get angry and say something like a wicked beast. Chen Jinyuan quickly stepped forward and saluted, saying quickly before his father spoke, Dad, the child is unjustly accused. Then, he explained the cause and effect of the incident as quickly as possible, and quickly handed over the storage bag he had picked up, letting his father go. Afraid of speaking too slowly, the old man slapped his face. Don't be fooled by the father's submissive demeanor in front of his grandfather, but in front of his sons, he has always had a strong presence. Dad didn't say a word from beginning to end, his face remained majestic. But Chen Jinyuan keenly felt that his father's emotions seemed to have stabilized a lot, and couldn't help but breathe a sigh of relief. Chen Daoling glanced at the storage bag and said calmly, perhaps a guest accidentally dropped it. If you verify the source, you can return it to them. Yes, father. Although Chen Jinyuan felt sorry for the spirit stone, he obediently took orders. After speaking, Chen Daoling walked towards the door. Halfway through, he stopped and leaned over to advise, your 4th uncle is going back to Xianxia City tomorrow to do something. Follow him to help. Remember, watch more and speak less, and learn from your 4th uncle well. Child, remember. Chen Jinyuan bent down and lowered his eyes, showing a respectful attitude. After Chen Daoling left, Xianxia and waited for a moment, Chen Jinyuan leaped up and kicked the 2 servants, Xishuan and Fubao, to the ground. He cursed and said, you 2 bastards, how dare you chew your tongues. The 2 servants dared not get up and lay on the ground, lamenting, young master, I am wronged. We are all your close servants, and our masters and servants have always suffered losses. How could we speak recklessly and harm the young master? By the way, it must have been the 2,000 knife-killing dog thieves who were on duty at the gatekeeper today spreading rumors. We'll go catch them and bring them back to you, young master, and hand them over to you. Chen Jinyuan frowned slightly. After a little meditation, he slowly shook his head and said, it seems that this matter is somewhat strange. You 2 should not act recklessly, but investigate the source of the information first. I will deal with this matter after I return from Xianxia City. Yes, young master. The 2 servants, Xishuan and Fubao, rolled up and respectfully accepted their orders, with a look of shared hatred and resentment. 2 servants were sent away. Chen Jing was transported into a small building facing the south. The carved beams and painted rafters building is very elegant. On the key pillars and beam structures of the building, there are some small flags arranged, swaying without wind and forming a unique rhythmic resonance with each other invisibly. This is a common, small gathering spirit formation in the cultivation world, which is centered around a palm-sized array disc. As soon as Chen Jinyuan stepped into the small building, He felt a hint of coolness rushing towards his face, and his whole body was invigorated by it. The spiritual energy here is several times stronger than within the main residence area. If you live in this small building for a long time, even if you don't practice, just passively being infected by spiritual energy every day can prolong your life and easily live to 80 or 90 years old. At this point, another servant brought dinner. In the wooden plate, there is a plate of steamed blue-tailed spirit sturgeon fish chunks. This fish is one of the unique treasures of the East China Sea, and often requires several skilled water refining cultivators to hunt and capture it successfully. There is also a small plate of stir-fried qingling lotus root slices, which is one of the specialties of our own courtyard's Qiuhu Villa. It has some spirituality and can be consumed for a long time to clear the mind and eyes. There is also a small bowl of white jade spirit rice, with distinct and crystal-clear grains that smell fragrant and fragrant. It is also produced by the family's spiritual field. A few days ago was the mourning period for Grandpa Tai, and Chen Jinyuan was feeling sad and busy, not having enough food to eat properly. At this moment, he was sniffing the aroma of fresh food, and his stomach suddenly started to growl and his appetite suddenly opened up. Chen Jinyuan picked up the rice, picked up a piece of fish, and ate his belly. The tight and elastic texture of the meat immediately filled him with a sense of happiness. The only downside is that the fiber of the fish is a bit rough, which is far inferior to the delicacy of the family specialty, qingling coelia. It's just that the qingling swordfish has a smaller body size, which means it's just a delicious taste and needs to be supplied to the Yunyang sect for a long time. As a result, Chen Jinyuan never ate it a few times from childhood to adulthood. He ate a mouthful of rice and dishes, and in no time, he finished a clean dinner. Putting down the dishes, Chen Jinyuan leaned back, feeling full and comfortable both physically and mentally, and his whole body became lazy. The servant quickly tidied up before retreating. As the spiritual ingredients were digested, Chen Jinyuan's body gradually heated up, and a wave of energy was generated in his abdomen. It was as agile as a small mouse running around in his body, which was a concrete manifestation of strong qi and blood. He didn't dare to delay and entered the cultivation room. He sat cross-legged on a cushion and began to operate the family's traditional cultivation method, Jinyuan forging body skill. In the realm of cultivation, the cultivation methods can be roughly divided into three categories. One is the Dao Tong, the second is the Zheng Fa, and the third is the Wild Fa. Dao Tong is a top-level cultivation technique that only exists in large quantities, which can directly point to the realm of Yuanying. There are even techniques that can allow Yuanying cultivators to continue to break through. The cultivation methods at the level of orthodoxy are beyond the imagination of immortal families like the Chen family of Zhangyi. And the righteous method is the orthodox cultivation method in this world, which can be practiced until the golden elixir period, and some righteous methods can continue to be practiced during the golden elixir period. Even within the Cloud Yang sect, there are only a dozen or so righteous teachings. Under the righteous law, all are wild laws. But the wild law is also divided into good and bad. Excellent cultivation techniques can achieve success during the foundation period. The worst wild methods lack even the cultivation methods during the foundation period, and can only wander during the qi refining period. The Jinyuan forging body technique practiced by Chen Jinyuan is a rare and superior wild technique, which can be practiced up to 6 levels during the foundation building period. As Chen Jinyuan calmed down, his breathing gradually lengthened, and the distractions dissipated, leaving his mind and body peaceful and clear. With each breath, the surrounding air will enter the body, and after removing impurities and retaining essence, the turbid and most spiritual energy will be exhaled out of the body. Time and time again, like waves washing sand, leaving only a trace of golden spiritual energy. Every time a trace of golden spiritual energy is gathered, it will merge with the vigorous qi and blood, sinking into the sea of qi. At the same time, the spiritual power that bulges in the sea of qi, under the guidance of Chen Jinyuan's consciousness, flows along the meridians towards the lower abdomen and perineum, then reaches the Weilu Pass, Mingmen Pass, Dazhui Pass, Yuzhen Pass, and finally passes through the Baihui Pass. After a brief pause in the Purple Mansion, the spiritual power flows down the face gate like a waterfall, and then converges again into the sea of qi in the lower abdomen. This is what is commonly referred to as the Great Zhou Tian Yun Zhuan in the cultivation method. Every big weekend brings a cool and comfortable feeling to Chen Jinyuan's body, making his mind empty and his whole body comfortable. Unconsciously. One night passed. As Chen Jinyuan woke up from his meditation, the horizon of the Qingyu cliff had turned white with fish bellies. He stood up and stretched lazily, his bones cracking and making a chaotic noise. He only felt that the spiritual platform was clear and refreshing, and the spiritual power in the sea of qi seemed to be moistened once again. He couldn't help but feel secretly happy, and it seemed that his cultivation tonight was quite advanced. The path of cultivation has always been long and tedious, emphasizing the accumulation of months and years. Spiritual roots and blood vessels are certainly important, but firm willpower and character are equally indispensable. Chen Jinyuan washed himself up and went to Shuyuan www.zhaoshuyuan.com to carefully tidy up his appearance in front of the Liuli Jian. Looking at the handsome and heroic appearance in the Jian, he couldn't help but nod in satisfaction. Later, he had some breakfast under the service of the servant, and then went to visit fourth uncle Chen Daoyuan at the Xiyuan residence. The courtyard of Xiyuan residence is full of vitality and flowers. As soon as Chen Jinyuan entered the door, he saw a man in his 30s who was meticulously pruning and tending to strange flowers and plants. The most eye-catching among them is a spirit peony, with a bright color and emitting waves of strange fragrance. Jinyuan pays his respects to fourth uncle. Chen Jinyuan stepped forward and respectfully bowed. Yunar is here. Chen Daoyuan put down his work and greeted with a smile, come on, accompany your fourth uncle to have morning tea first. As he spoke, he also shouted to the inside, Yun, your nephew with good fortune has arrived. Hurry up and make a teapot of green sprout sparrow tongue. The words have just finished. I saw a graceful and beautiful woman carrying a tea plate into the yard, and her pretty eyes glanced at Chen Daoyuan with anger, saying, I see you're just using your luck to trick me into drinking spiritual tea. Chen Jinyuan also quickly bowed and said, Jinyuan has seen fourth auntie. His fourth aunt Zheng Yiyun is a legitimate descendant of the Zheng family in Lingbei, and also the great-granddaughter of the Zheng family's Qiqiu ancestor. The Chen, Zheng, and Zhao families jointly established the Xishan district, and in order to consolidate their alliance of interests, they naturally formed alliances with each other. Fourth aunt Zheng Yiyun married into the Chen family during everyone's honeymoon period. However, as time passed, the conflicting interests of each family gradually became apparent, and the relationship became increasingly tense. The founder of Qiqiu even threatened not to have any contact with Chen Xuanmo, who had passed away. However, this time when Xuanmo Ancestor fell, Qiqiu Ancestor finally came to mourn as soon as possible. Chapter 6. Recognizing the Lord with the Spirit Sword. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, Jinyuan, don't bother with your fourth uncle. Come and taste this newly brewed green sprout sparrow tongue. Zheng Yiyun placed the tea plate on the stone table and warmly greeted Chen Jinyuan. Thank you for your hospitality, fourth aunt. Chen Jinyuan stood aside and waited for fourth uncle Chen Daoyuan to sit on the stone bench before sitting down, his body straight. Your fourth aunt is stingy. It's even harder for your fourth uncle to take a bite of her green sprouts and sparrow tongue than to climb to the sky on weekdays. Chen Daoyuan rolled up his sleeves and smiled as he poured tea for Chen Jinyuan. Today, my fourth uncle has been exposed to your light. Chen Daoyuan, who are you burying? Zheng Yiyun gave him a pretty look and said, at your age, don't waste these precious spiritual objects. But it's Jinyuan, a child with a simple temperament and natural for spiritual roots, who has an infinite future." As she spoke, she took out a delicate small jar and handed it to Jinyuan, saying, "These are some small wishes from your fourth aunt. I wish you a bright future on your path of cultivation. These, green sprouts and sparrow tongues, are the specialty Lingcha of the Jing family in Lingbei, which comes at a high price." Obviously, they were all collected by the fourth aunt Jinyuan from her mother's house. "Fourth auntie, this is not suitable, why not leave it to fourth brother?" Jinyuan quickly stood up and declined. Although Chen Daoyuan and his wife appear young and talented, they are already in their 40s and have given birth to many children. Among them, Chen Jingrui, the eldest son, was already in his 20s and had just become a relative to Gao Palian from the Gao family in Hedong half a year ago. "Jinyuan kid, if your fourth aunt asks you to take it, then take it." Chen Daoyuan glared at his nephew. "Jingrui's stinky kid is just a 5-spirit root. He has no hope of building a foundation in his lifetime. It doesn't make much difference whether he drinks this tea or not. It's your kid who has been practicing the golden element forging technique with your grandfather since childhood. Being able to build the foundation a year earlier gives you an extra hope of advancing into the later stages of foundation building. If we can, like your great-grandfather, complete the construction of the foundation in the later stage, we will definitely be able to once again expand our Chen family's family." As soon as Chen Xuanmo was mentioned, Chen Daoyuan's expression slightly darkened. He was both saddened by his grandfather's death and worried about the difficulties that the Chen family would soon face. Chen Jinyuan also let out a soft sigh in his heart, and finally accepted fourth aunt's spiritual tea with a solemn expression. "Thank you very much for the gift from fourth uncle and fourth aunt. I will definitely work hard to cultivate and live up to the family's expectations. Don't be too stressed, Jinyuan. Just focus on cultivation. Everything in the family is carried by the elders. This day, it won't collapse." Chen Daoyuan smiled with a relaxed expression. "Stop talking about this. Come on, have tea." Chen Jinyuan nodded and drank tea. The green buds and roots inside the teacup were distinct, standing upside down like a sparrow's tongue. The cold fragrance filled his nose, and he drank it in one gulp. He suddenly felt a refreshing sensation spread throughout his body, making his mind much clearer. If consumed for a long time, it can definitely cleanse the soul and enhance spiritual awareness. Good tea. It is truly the famous Qinya Chueji tea in Hedong, and one of the best spiritual teas. Chen Jinyuan praised it endlessly. The path of cultivating immortals emphasizes the 4 elements of law, wealth, couple, and land, which are interdependent and equally important. It goes without saying that the Jinyuan forging technique practiced by Chen Jinyuan is the superior cultivation method in the wild method. Of course, if there is a positive method, it would be even better. The word wealth is also extremely crucial. Spiritual stones, heavenly and earthly treasures, elixirs, talismans, magic treasures, and so on are all crucial. This green bud, sparrow tongue, spiritual rice, and spiritual flesh are all manifestations of wealth. With abundant wealth and the ability to purchase various cultivation resources, it is naturally much stronger than those impoverished individuals who engage in casual cultivation. The speed of cultivation and progress is completely different. After a few cups of tea, the spirituality of a pot of tea has been thoroughly consumed, becoming bland and tasteless. Chen Daoyuan reluctantly ended his morning tea time and waved his hand impatiently to Chen Jinyuan, saying, "All right, Jinyuan, you go wait outside the courtyard first. Let me say goodbye to your fourth aunt." Chen Jinyuan laughed dumbfounded. Fourth uncle and fourth aunt are really deeply married. After bowing, he went to wait outside the Xiyuan residence. After Chen Jinyuan left, the relaxed and composed expressions of Chen Daoyuan and Zhang Yiyun gradually dissipated, replaced by an indelible melancholy. "Brother Yuan, has the situation really reached this point?" Zhang Yiyun furrowed his brows slightly and said with some concern, the old master is just a new funeral, and the Zhang and Zhao families are eager to redistribute benefits. Isn't it too much? In the realm of cultivating immortals, we always prioritize the strong. Chen Daoyuan sighed and said, when Grandpa was alive, our Chen family enjoyed the 40% profit alone for so long. The Zhang and Zhao families had long been dissatisfied, but their military strength was slightly inferior, and they could only swallow their pride. Now, there is only one cultivator left in our Chen family, the head of the family, who was in the early stages of building a foundation. His strength is not as strong as before. Zheng and Zhao couldn't resist and began to use small movements to test our bottom line, which is normal. Brother Yuan, do you want me to go back to my parents' house and plead with my ancestors? They still love me a lot on a daily basis. Zheng Yiyan bit his lip, his eyes shining brightly. I really don't want to see the conflict between Zheng and Chen deepen, causing a lot of conflict. Never let it happen. Chen Daoyuan quickly refused. Yun Mei, Chichio ancestor loves you because you were willing to sacrifice yourself and marry me for the sake of the overall situation of the Zhao family. For ancestor Chichio, the core interests of our family must be above all else. If you rashly return to your mother's house to plead for mercy, not only will you run into ashes, but you will also make Zhao look down on us. After pausing for a moment, without waiting for his wife to speak, Chen Daoyuan took the initiative to appease him and said, Yun Mei, don't worry, Zheng and Zhao are ultimately related to Chen by marriage and both belong to the rule of Yunyang sect. They always follow the rules in everything. Your task is to take care of your children at home and stabilize your inner home. I will mediate the matter in Shishanfang City. Well, Brother Yuan, I'll listen to you. Zheng Yiyan nodded solemnly, I will work with your husband and wife to overcome difficulties together. After chatting a few more words, Chen Daoyuan finally went out to meet Chen Jinyuan. However, when Chen Jinyuan was seen, the solemnity on his face had completely dissipated, and he remained so relaxed and composed, as if everything was under control. The two of them chatted and laughed, heading straight towards the mountain gate. I only left halfway. Suddenly, a piercing sound echoed in my ears. Immediately after, a ray of spiritual light descended from the sky, circling around Chen Jinyuan like an agile snake before hovering in front of him. This scene startled Chen Daoyuan, who had reached the peak of the 6th level of the qi refining period. He quickly protected Chen Jinyuan behind him, and upon closer inspection, he realized that the spiritual light was extremely familiar. A small sword the size of a palm, with a bead embedded in the hilt, emitting a dazzling sparkling light throughout. Xuanmo Spirit Sword. This is the shrunken appearance of the Xuanmo Spirit Sword. Both uncles and nephews were taken aback. They went to the book garden www.zhaoshuyuan.com and didn't understand how the Xuanmo Spirit Sword could fly out of the temple and even followed them. Shoo! The Xuanmo Spirit Sword darted up and down twice, flying directly into the palm of Chen Jinyuan's hand. With a flash of spiritual light, it transformed into an inconspicuous small sword. Fourth uncle, what's going on here? Chen Jinyuan held the Xuanmo Spirit Sword in his hand, feeling somewhat bewildered. Chen Dao was far-sighted and knowledgeable, feeling his chin and speculating, most likely it was the Xuanmo Spirit Sword that nurtured the spirit of the tool, and it was willing to recognize you as the Lord. Although he said so, his heart was full of doubts and uncertainty. My grandfather's Xuanmo Spirit Sword is just a medium-grade spiritual weapon, and its birth year is not long. How could it cultivate a spiritual weapon? Do you recognize me as the Lord? Chen Jinyuan was shocked and said with a hint of fear, I'm only 19 years old, and I haven't even reached the Lingquan realm. Even if the Lingjian wants to recognize me as the Lord, shouldn't it recognize my grandfather as the Lord? In his concept, Grandpa Chen Ningtai is the leader of the clan and the most qualified person to wield the Xuanmo Spirit Sword. Huh, Jinyuan kid, don't underestimate yourself, Chen Daoyuan said with a smile. Before your great-grandfather passed away, you were his beloved great-grandson. His elders always say that you are at least 5 or 6 times like him when he was young. Now Xuanmo's spirit sword is willing to accompany you, perhaps it's your grandfather's secret wish to let it grow with you. However, this matter is of great importance and we need to consult your grandfather's opinion first. The more Chen Daoyuan spoke, the more he felt it made sense. However, when he said he wanted to inquire about Chen Ningtai's thoughts, the Xuanmo spirit sword seemed unwilling. It leaped up like a fish, blooming with spiritual light and flew directly towards the mountain gate. Not good, let's keep up quickly. Chen Daoyuan's face changed and he quickly picked up Chen Jinyuan, flying to catch up. Chapter 7. The Wild Cultivation Girl Endless. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push. Fortunately, Xuanmo Lingjian did not want to get rid of them. Not long after leaving the mountain gate, he returned to Chen Jinyuan's hands, with an attitude of not having to listen to anyone's thoughts when I wanted to talk to you. Chen Daoyuan had no choice but to instruct, since the sword has spirit and insists on doing so, you can temporarily put it away and report it to your grandfather when you come back. Remember, don't use it easily unless absolutely necessary. Yes, fourth uncle. Chen Jinyuan carefully held the Xuanmo spirit sword, wanting to put it in the storage ring, but felt disrespectful. After thinking for a moment, he finally respectfully hid it close in his arms. Without a doubt. This is the handwriting of Chen Xuanmo. Since parting ways with his great-grandson Chen Jinyuan yesterday, he has been wandering around the main residence and has indeed seen many scenes that his ancestors would not normally see. Later on, he tried again that when moving in a heroic state, he could only be within a radius of 10 miles from the teleportation bead. Once the scope is exceeded, the action will become more sluggish. Yesterday, he had nowhere to go after playing until midnight, and in the end, he had to return to the ancestral hall. The long night was long, cold and lonely, and he could only calm down to continue studying the wonderful use of purple energy. Quickly, Chen Xuanmo discovered again that with just a little purple energy, he could control the Xuanmo spirit sword with ease of movement. Early this morning, he heard that Chen Jinyuan was going to Xianxia city, so he couldn't wait to come and meet him, ready to go out for a walk. After all, in the last 10 years of his life, his body was deteriorating, and to prevent accidents from happening, he almost never left the Qinyu cliff. Seeing Chen Jinyuan put away his spiritual sword, Chen Daoyuan smiled and said, "Let's go." As he spoke, he lightly tapped the storage bag, and a small red sword flew out of it. It grew longer and larger in the wind, emitting a faint flame. This is the Fire Cloud Sword, which is a rare intermediate-level magical weapon. It can be used as both an offensive and defensive tactic, as well as a flying tool, and is truly incredibly useful. Chen Daoyuan leaped up and flew down the mountain, wielding the Fire Cloud Sword. Chen Jinyuan also summoned the flying magic weapon. Lingye, carrying one hand and following behind Chen Daoyuan in a graceful posture. 2 streams of light, one red and one green, fly down the ridge. Previously, Chen Jinyuan would have been envious of fourth uncle's Huiyun sword, but when he thought of the Xuanmo spirit sword in his arms, his heart was filled with a surge of passion. But they haven't waited for them to fly down the mountain yet. On the mountain platform, suddenly a paper kite flew up into the air, flapping and fluttering. On the paper kite, there was still a young girl sitting with a beautiful dress swaying in the wind. Who is not Wang Qianqian? Chen Jinyuan's face was a bit dark. This wild cultivator girl is not endless, is she? Flying closer, Wang Qianqian even squeezed out a pleasing smile at Chen Jinyuan. However, she didn't speak either, just following at a constant speed from 7 or 8 feet away, with a look of where you go and where I go. This makes Chen Jinyuan completely helpless against her. Jinyuan, is this the beautiful casual cultivator you went to the private meeting in the back mountain? Chen Daoyuan drove the Fire Cloud Sword at a leisurely speed, his robe fluttering with a graceful posture of a jade tree facing the wind. He asked with a smile using his communication skills, it looks pretty, you have a good eye. Once this statement is made, Chen Jinyuan's face turned even darker. Who else in the entire Chen family doesn't know about this now? Feeling depressed, he intensified his efforts and urged Lingye to accelerate his flight. However, among the 3 people on site, his cultivation was the lowest, and Wang Qianqian and Chen Daoyuan easily followed suit. When the 3 of them passed by the foot of the mountain, a mortal market town could be seen not far away. This is Xianxia town, mainly inhabited by some ordinary branches of the Chen family, as well as ordinary people serving the Chen family in the Canyi region. But Chen Daoyuan and others did not enter Xianxia town, but bypassed the foot of Canyi mountain and headed straight northwest. Qi refining cultivators often do not fly too high. Firstly, most magic tools do not support high-altitude flight, and high-altitude is too dangerous. Once you fall from a magic tool, when your spiritual power is insufficient to resist qi, you may fall and die. Secondly, the higher the altitude, the stronger the strong wind. Cultivators often need to use their spiritual power to resist the strong wind, and their own consumption is too high. If they don't fly too far, they will become weak in their successors. Just this time, before he could fly dozens of miles away, Chen Jinyuan's breath became somewhat unstable and his forehead was slightly sweating. Chen Daoyuan saw the situation and drove his fire cloud sword to catch up. He smiled and said, "Jinyuan, you're flying too fast. On a long journey, you can't be in a hurry for a moment. Be sure to control your spiritual energy consumption and maintain the speed of spiritual energy recovery to achieve a clever balance." When a cultivator uses a flying tool, they also need to input spiritual power to drive the tool. The faster the speed, the more intense the spiritual power consumption. This is the same principle as long-distance running, where poor rhythm control can easily lead to weak successors. Thank you for the 4th uncle's reminder. Chen Jinyuan quickly slowed down his speed and glared fiercely at Wang Qianqian behind him. If it weren't for her staring too closely, he wouldn't have accelerated his flight in such a hurry and roar. If he were to unleash all his might, he could naturally unleash a fleeting speed in a short period of time. However, in this way, the consumption of spiritual power will be astonishing, and at the peak level of his qi refining period, it cannot be maintained for long. However, Wang Qianqian had an innocent expression on his face and followed him with a pleasing smile. He said loudly, "Master Jinyuan, if your cultivation is not good, you can lower your body to save spiritual energy consumption." Humph. Chen Jinyuan turned his head and ignored her. Isn't it just the Lingquan realm? What's so nice about it? In less than a year, Chen Jinyuan will also be able to step into the Lingquan realm. Wang Qianqian secretly complained about it. Young Master Jinyuan of Chen's family is also very difficult to serve her. He always shakes her face. Qianqian, for the sake of big plans, you must persevere. Chen Xuanmo followed slowly behind, feeling a bit emotional upon seeing this scene. He had just entered the foundation construction period when he invented the prone flying spell with his head forward and hands in a gliding posture to reduce wind resistance, and was proud of it. As a result, he was called over by his master and scolded severely, saying that his defensive flying posture was reminiscent of a rat darting and a pig darting, as if he was in a state of embarrassment when running for his life. Our cultivators walk in the air, holding their heads and chests high, standing proudly between heaven and earth. I've talked a lot about it. At that time, Chen Xuanmo was somewhat disgusted by Master's verbosity, but now he thinks about it. Sai Master, I, Chen Xuanmo, have ultimately failed your expectations. Not to mention idle talk. Chen Jinyuan and his group flew for almost an hour, totaling about 160 miles. Just as Chen Jinyuan's spiritual energy was about to run out of support, a farm caught everyone's eye from afar. That is a canyon area along the river, with crisscrossing paths and vibrant vitality. Zhaoshuyuan.com. This is the Dingfeng farm of the Chen family, which produces grain and a small amount of lingmi, as well as various meat products such as poultry and livestock. Jinyuan, let's settle down at Dingfeng Farm, take a break, and then hurry on. Chen Daoyuan urged his sword light and flew towards Dingfeng Farm first. When he arrived, he pressed down again and drove his fire cloud sword to the front door of the farm. The flying sword has not stopped yet. He lightly jumped off the flying sword with one hand on his back, and then gracefully took a few steps in the air under inertia. With each finger pointing, the fire cloud sword transformed into a stream of light and returned to the storage bag, with an indescribable and graceful posture. Chen Jinyuan followed closely behind and collected the flying magic weapon Lingye with the same set of movements. He had been on the road for a long time, panting unevenly and sweating faintly on his back. He felt a little less comfortable than his own fourth uncle, but still exuded a strong demeanor. Following closely behind, Xianxia couldn't help but support his forehead, feeling a slight pain in his brain. Yesterday, when she saw Chen Jinyuan's pretentious sword retraction movement in the back mountain, she had the urge to toe the ground. I thought it was just a personal preference and taste issue, but unexpectedly, it was a signature move of the Chen family. I don't know who designed this sword retraction move. Not only childish, but also awkward. She even wanted to escape. Is it really reliable to be such a wealthy person? Only Xuanmo, who followed in a heroic state, couldn't help but nod in satisfaction as he watched his grandson and grandchild's sword retraction movements. I truly deserve to be a descendant of Xuanmo's bloodline, with all the 5 or 6 distractions of his youth. At the beginning, his sword closing action was designed with painstaking care by referring to the essence of many film and television works before the journey. When I was in Yunyang sect, I don't know how many senior sisters and senior sisters I have fallen in love with. Chapter 8. The Arrogant Locust Sparrow. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, at this moment. The gate of Dingfeng Farm opens. A lot of people rushed out of it, led by a young man in strong attire who was under 30 years old. As soon as he saw Chen Daoyuan and Chen Jinyuan, he immediately welcomed them with a surprised expression. Fourth uncle, fifth brother. Why did you come? Chen Jinyuan bowed and said, I've seen my second brother. Chen Daoyuan laughed and patted his shoulder, saying, Jingfei, you're running quite fast. You've come back so early to guard the farm. This man in strong attire is Chen Jingfei, the second son of the Jing generation, and Chen Jinyuan is a fellow mother. But suffering from being born without spiritual roots, one cannot cultivate immortal methods and can only cultivate some ordinary martial arts. Upon hearing this, Chen Jingfei showed a bitter smile and said, Fourth uncle, you don't know that it's the time for Lingu to grout. How dare I make any mistakes? Even if I set off a day early, I only took one step back before you. As soon as he mentioned this, Chen Jingfei couldn't help but show a look of envy. He used ordinary and famous horses and fast horses for his journey, and couldn't walk 2 steep mountain paths. He could only take a detour, unlike flying magic tools that can go straight in and out. He drove day and night, worked hard all day, and finally returned to the farm. But the cultivators of the family step on flying magic tools, from the farm to the Qinyu cliff, they only take 2 hours each time. But these are not the biggest differences between mortals and cultivators. Without a spiritual root, one cannot practice, let alone marry a wife with a spiritual root. In this way, it will fall into a vicious cycle, and if future generations come up with spiritual roots, they will have to rely on luck. According to the rules of the cultivation family, the first generation without spiritual roots can still enter the family genealogy in temple, but the descendants without spiritual roots can only be considered as collateral branches of the family, not even able to enter the family genealogy in temple. Seeing this scene, Chen Xuanmo also felt a little emotional in his heart. He had 4 sons and 3 daughters with his first wife Yao Qiuping, and 3 of them had no spiritual roots. Among them, Chen Ningde, the second son, had the deepest obsession. Even though he inherited his ordinary foundation and established the Chen family town, he remained a wealthy family for a lifetime and was still depressed before his death. Even in order for his descendants to have a spiritual root, he took in multiple concubines and spread branches and leaves to breed a large number of descendants. So far, he has never had a child with a spiritual root in his lineage and has not been able to return to the family tree. The cruelty of the cultivation world is nothing more than this. Not to mention that, the entrance is not a place to talk. Fourth uncle and fifth brother, and this girl, let's take a break at the farm first. Chen Jingfei also set aside his distractions and quickly welcomed everyone into Dingfeng farm. Chen Jinyuan gave Wang Qianqian a glare, implying that she should leave quickly and not eat or drink again. Unexpectedly, Wang Qianqian seemed to have missed his hint and followed behind Chen Daoyuan, bumping into the gate of the farm. This wild cultivator girl has really thick skin. Chen Jinyuan shook his head helplessly and followed her. Fifth brother, you usually focus on cultivation and don't know much about Dingfeng farm. I'll talk to you about it. After entering the farm, Chen Jingfei led everyone to the living room and introduced the situation. We have more than 150 tenant farmers in Dingfeng farm, tending to more than 3,000 acres of good land with 2 crops a year, and the annual output can reach more than 20,000 stones. The ordinary grain produced by Liangtian is named Dingfeng grain, because it is close to the spiritual meridian and has a small amount of spiritual energy to nourish it, and its quality far exceeds that of grain. In addition to supplying the family, the remaining portion is also sold to the outside world, which is highly sought after by the wealthy families of Canyue. However, these ordinary money are not very important to the Chen family. The core industry of our farm is still the 2-acre spiritual field opened up. The white jade spiritual valley planted here ripens once a year and can produce about 10 stones of spiritual rice. If all of it is sold to the public, it can be worth about 140 spiritual stones. 140 spirit stones. Still, every year. Chen Jingyun had not yet expressed himself, but Wang Qianqian's eyes were about to burst out. Then, there was a hint of flattery in her eyes as she looked at Chen Jinyuan. As far as she knows, the Chen family's industry goes far beyond this Dingfeng farm, and there are also some vassal families under her rule who regularly pay tribute to the Chen family. What kind of face are you? Chen Jinyuan dodged a few steps back and said disdainfully, this is not pure profit. We don't want to pay for grain seeds or fertilizers. We don't want to pay tribute to Yunyang sect. My fifth brother is right. Chen Jingfei smiled bitterly, planting in the spiritual field is not easy and consumes a lot. In addition to the necessary Chui's grain seed, there are 6 or 7 commonly used agricultural tools in stock, including the Chu's spirit plow, for plowing, the white jade clean bottle, specifically for watering the spiritual spring, the Azuichio pot, specifically for spraying medicine and insect repellent, and the Lu's sickle, for harvesting. Although these agricultural tools can be purchased at once and can be used for a long time, they will ultimately require the maintenance of spiritual stones. In addition, it is necessary to purchase a large amount of fertilizer every year. There are fertile land such as Di Lu Jin and Feng Chanling, as well as a large amount of spiritual animal fertilizer. Otherwise, in less than 1 or 2 years, the spiritual field will become barren. In addition, pest control and disease prevention are also of utmost importance. Insecticides such as Jinyuan insecticide powder and white powder spirit are definitely indispensable, and various drugs for disease prevention cannot be lacking. Otherwise, we will wait for a reduction in production. Even with careful care, Lingdao grows well, and there are also animal pests such as spirit rats and ferocious sparrows. I drove away a group of locusts and sparrows as soon as I returned, which was quite difficult to deal with. The most important thing is that our family's harvest of lingu, except for paying tribute to Yunyang sect, is mostly consumed within our own clan and has no spare power to sell externally. These words not only left Wang Qianqian dumbfounded, but even Jinyuan was a bit confused. Unexpectedly, planting Lingu was so troublesome, much more complicated than he had imagined. It's good to keep it for myself to eat, Xianxia smiled foolishly, recalling the experience of eating at the Chen family during her mourning period a few days ago. She couldn't help but smack her lips in nostalgia. The white jade spirit rice was so delicious. I'll have the kitchen prepare some dishes in a moment, Chen Jingfei said with a smile. Our farm still has some leftover rice from last year. Really? Wang Qianqian's eyes lit up with joy. Without waiting for Chen Jingfei to answer, suddenly several young tenant farmers in the distance stumbled and rushed over, shouting in panic, Master Jingfei, things are not going well. The locusts and sparrows have returned. This time, the quantity has increased. What? Chen Jingfei's face changed and he hurried forward. Although he has no spiritual roots, he has also cultivated the top-notch martial arts in the ordinary martial arts world, and now he is considered a top-notch martial artist in the martial arts world. He quickly runs down with his body technique, bringing up a trail of remnants. Before he could run more than 10 zhang away, Chen Daoyuan, who had stepped on the fire cloud sword, easily caught up with him. He grabbed him with his arm and said, "Don't panic, Jingfei. Fourth uncle will accompany you to take a look." The fire cloud sword pulled up a red stream of light and rushed towards the direction of the spirit field. Seeing the urgency of the situation, Chen Jinyuan and Wang Qianqian also looked stern, each wielding flying magic weapons and catching up closely. Once the cultivator disregards their explosive speed, they can quickly reach the 2-acre core spiritual field of Dingfeng Farm in just a few tens of breaths. Looking down. The white jade spirit rice in those 2 acres of spirit fields has grown to 1 person tall, with green rice ears and distinct grains in the spirit grain. It is obvious that it has reached the critical period of grain filling. At this critical moment, a group of ferocious sparrows are rampant in the field, with round and chubby bodies, each measuring about a foot in length. The total number may be around 30 to 50. A few of them were quite fierce, about 2 feet long, and as they grazed, gusts of strong winds swept through them. There is also a leader like Locust Sparrow, with a body length of over 3 feet. Its feathers are as black as iron, its beak and claws are cold, and there is also a tuft of red hair on its head, which looks very lively. Under the command of the leader Locust Sparrows, the group of Locust Sparrows, like locusts, repeatedly attacked and ravaged the white jade spirit rice. With their sharp beaks, they picked up a string of rice ears, and then a group of Locust Sparrows rushed forward, leaving only 1 stalk in the blink of an eye. The reason why Locust Sparrows are called Locust Sparrows is that during the grain-filling period in the spiritual field, they will flee in groups from the southern barren mountains, wreaking havoc and plundering. If not properly guarded, it is highly likely that the entire spiritual field will be without a harvest. Animal Chen Jingfei saw this scene and was shocked and angry, and his eyes were about to crack. Just last night, he led the guards of the farm and the young tenant farmers, and finally dispersed a wave of locusts and sparrows. He thought it would calm down for 2 days so that he could notify the cultivators to come and protect the fields. Unexpectedly, after only 1.5 nights of hard work, the locust sparrow returned and brought back a large army, including a terrifying leader Locust Sparrow. Animal, dare you! Fourth Uncle Chen Daoyuan was also very angry. This is all the food for the cultivators of the clan, how can the animals waste it? He held Chen Jingfei in one hand and lightly kicked the fire cloud sword with his toes. The Huiyan sword flew out with a whoosh, transforming into a fiery sword light and fiercely thrusting towards the leader, the Locust Sparrow. Chapter 9. This casual practice is a bit wild. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, unexpectedly. The leader Locust Sparrow was very agile, smelling a crisis approaching. With its wings folded, its round and smooth body suddenly fell downwards. With a whoosh, The fiery sword light flashed over its head. A thin flame burned over its head, causing its feathers to scorch and wither. The majestic red hair turned into ash and drifted outward with the wind. Jiu, the leader Locust Sparrow, was both scared and angry. He raised his throat and let out a piercing scream, then slammed his wings and fled towards the distance like a stream of light. The swarm of locusts and sparrows was also completely alarmed. Amidst a series of chirps, they suddenly rose up from the ground and fled desperately like a dark cloud passing through. They ran at an extremely fast speed, flying far away in just a few breaths. Chase. Chen Daoyuan's face was solemn, and he carried Chen Jingfei flying in the air. He lightly stepped on the fire cloud sword that had curved back and chased after him first. And Chen Jinyuan and Wang Qianqian continued to drive flying magic weapons and closely followed behind. After chasing and running, we quickly reached a distance of more than 10 miles. This is a forest that grows on the basis of mountains. Under the leadership of the leader, the swarm of locusts and sparrows flew down and disappeared into the forest in the blink of an eye. The light in the forest was dim, and their hemp-black feathers were a natural protective color. As soon as they entered, they immediately disappeared like mud cows into the sea. What a villain! You're really cunning. Fourth Uncle Chen Daoyuan was infuriated and flipped his fingertips, directing the fire cloud sword to shoot wildly and slash into the forest. Wherever the sword light passed, thick branches fell to the ground with a loud roar, and many trees were cut off by the waist, collapsing with a loud bang, emitting bursts of flames under the scorching flames. Fortunately, it's not winter now. After the fire burned for a while, it dimmed and did not spread. However, Chen Daoyuan's handsome face became increasingly stern. He had a magnificent qi refining period of 6 levels, and when the cultivator at the peak of the spirit spring realm made a move, his sword light was as fierce as a dragon in the sea, but surprisingly, he didn't even hit half of the locust sparrow. Finally, a group of people landed on a bare rock and looked at the vast dense forest with a worried expression on their faces. Fourth Uncle, you're too hasty to wield your sword. Chen Jingfei couldn't help but complain, we should first surround the locusts and cut off their retreat before taking action together. At least we should also take down the leader locusts, so they won't dare to come again. Jingfei kid, don't come with your fourth uncle to act recklessly. Chen Daoyuan glared at him unhappily. You've been stationed at Dingfeng Farm all year round, and it's not the first time you've been against locusts and sparrows. Do you have any clever plans now? Can you use traps to deal with them? Fourth uncle, Chen Jingfei said with a bitter smile. The locust sparrow has always been cunning and vengeful. Often, after suffering a loss, it will develop a long memory. That leader locust sparrow's strength has reached the mid-level of the first level, and at first glance, it appears to be a habitual offender. Now that you have surprised him again, he is afraid that it will become even more difficult to deal with in the future. So, it's a bit troublesome, Chen Daoyuan frowned. Jinyuan and I still have to rush to the local market. We're afraid we won't be able to guard the spiritual field all the time to prevent these animals. Chen Jinyuan also said helplessly, then we can only pass the message to Qingyu Cliff and invite other members of the tribe to protect the fields. Suddenly, Wang Qianqian rolled his eyes and said, just some locusts and sparrows, why bother so much? As soon as she said this, everyone's eyes turned towards her in unison. You don't have any new flashy ideas, do you? Chen Jinyuan scrutinized with suspicion in his eyes. Chen Gongzi, we can't reach a consensus on the project, but the transaction cannot be settled. How can you tarnish my reputation for nothing? Wang Qianqian puffed his cheeks and looked indignant. Chen Jinyuan's face turned slightly red and he quickly arched his hand to apologize, indeed, I made a mistake in the next moment. I hope Miss Qianqian can forgive me. It's okay, considering that you are a wealthy person, I won't argue with you too much, Wang Qianqian waved her hand with a magnanimous expression. If Miss Qianqian can really solve the problem of locusts and sparrows, I owe you one favor. Jinyuan arched his hand again. The Locust Sparrow is already cunning, and the leader Locust Sparrow is obviously more psychic. His wisdom is not inferior to that of our human race. Xianxia suddenly raised his voice, it may be extremely difficult to get rid of them. Please escort me back to the cave. Help me invite my ancestors' treasure, the burning furnace, to burn the entire mountain clean, and only a small swarm of locusts and sparrows will break through without attack. During speech, Xianxia continued to wink at Jinyuan and the other three. Jinyuan instinctively wanted to refute this absurd plan, but looking at her eyes and expression, she suddenly became suspicious and uncertain. Good idea. Wonderful. Yuan patted his thigh and exclaimed in surprise, it's not too late. Miss Xianxia, let's go and return quickly. Don't worry, don't worry. Once we come, it only takes half a day, Xianxia shouted, and then flew towards the distance with a paper kite. Yuan picked up Jinyuan and followed him, then said to Jingfei from a distance, Jingfei kid, please protect the Lingtian first. I'll go back when I go. Yes, fourth uncle. Jingfei bowed and then used his body movements to rush back to the spiritual field of the farm. And Xianxia and his group of three gradually flew away. After 7 or 8 miles, everyone circled under the command of Xianxia and quietly flew back to the farm, finding a secluded cottage to hide. Such a serious demeanor made Jinyuan dare not be careless at all. He tried his best to hold his breath and asked in a low voice, Miss Xianxia, is the leader of the Locust Sparrow really so knowledgeable about human nature? Can you understand what we're saying? Xianxia shook her head, lowered her voice, and said word by word, no, definitely, definitely. Jinyuan's face turned black and he forcefully suppressed the urge to hit someone. So, you're still leading us and pretending to do a big show. As the saying goes, be lenient with the enemy, let's just pretend that he understands people's words. Xianxia said nonchalantly, looking for Xuanmo www.zhaoxuan.com. But it's just a play, and we didn't have much trouble. This is called There Are Dates But No Dates, let's play 3 sticks first. Jinyuan was momentarily shocked. Good guy, these casual cultivators should not be taken lightly. This trip has really broadened my horizons. He received strict family rules education from a young age, knew etiquette and filial piety, and could never lie casually. Of course, he felt like he was completely different from Xianxia. However, it is normal for the Cultivation family to implement this educational policy. The Mingdao school within the clan cannot easily teach children various deceitful techniques and tricks, can it? In this way, there will be constant disputes within the entire family, planting countless roots of trouble. In order for any aristocratic family to achieve long-term inheritance, in addition to excellent strength, rules, etiquette, family affection, reputation, etc., are inevitably indispensable. For a moment, Jinyuan became even more vigilant towards Xianxia, so as not to be deceived by her and help count the money. So, what good strategy does Miss Xianxia have next? Jinyuan still worries about the disaster of locusts and sparrows and asks after him. Isn't there still some aged Lingmi in Zhuangzi? Xianxia flipped through the storage bag on her waist and took out a porcelain bottle, saying mysteriously, I have a unique bottle of drunken powder, colorless and tasteless. With just a drop, I can knock down a cow. Hiss. Jinyuan took a cold breath and took a few steps back, getting away from Xianxia, his eyes full of vigilance. Miss Xianxia, why do you carry strong sleeping pills with you? The world of cultivating immortals is so dangerous. As a wandering cultivator, I carry a bottle of strong overpowering medicine with me, which is very reasonable. Xianxia blinked his innocent and pure-looking eyes and explained solemnly. Chapter 10. Man dies for wealth, bird dies for food. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ads by Google equals window. Ads by Google. Push, is it reasonable and reasonable? Is it unreasonable? Obviously not. Jinyuan waved his hand and didn't want to get entangled in this matter anymore. He turned to questioning, that leader Locust Sparrow is very cunning and vigilant. I'm afraid he won't be so easily fooled, right? After all, beasts are just beasts. In terms of cunning, how can they be compared to humans? Xianxia looked confident. Next, as long as you follow my instructions, I will ensure that the leader locust bird cannot escape our palm. Okay, then I'll wait and see. Jinyuan hesitated slightly before finally nodding in agreement. It's all wrapped around me, Xianxia patted her chest with a strong aura. You tell the kitchen to cook a pot of lingmi first, make a few more good dishes, by the way, and then make a jar of good wine. Jinyuan glanced incessantly and said, I can understand cooking as bait, but the food and drink. Even the king of hell is not short of starving ghosts. I have to eat enough before I work, right? Xianxia rolled his eyes. Just kidding, she stayed by Jinyuan on the mountain path all night last night, and today she's been busy flying around for half a day. She's already so hungry that her chest is pressing against her back. Jinyuan remained silent for a while, doubting whether he had ultimately believed her wrong. Cough cough, Jinyuan cleared his throat and smiled to make a comeback. Miss Xianxia is right. Let's eat first and then work. I'll have someone arrange it, he said a few hours later. In the evening, the sky had become somewhat gray. Outside the 2 acres of spiritual fields on the farm, inside the night cabin. Jinyuan's uncle and nephew, as well as Xianxia, all squatted in it, while Jingfei, accompanied by young tenant farmers and guards, patrolled outside the spiritual field with full armament, appearing heavily guarded. On the small grain-drying field next to the Lingtian, there are some adult lingmi scattered for drying. They emit gusts of alcohol, with a fragrant aroma overflowing. Under the influence of magic, the smell spreads far away along the wind. Jinyuan questioned, since you want to set a trap, why bother setting up the field protection patrol on guard? The leader of the Locust Sparrow is not foolish. It's unreasonable for the spiritual field to be unattended at this time, isn't it? Xianxia said with a rosy cheek and a burp, I'm actually reducing the Locust Sparrow's suspicion. Is your trap too obvious? Jinyuan questioned again, how could the bait be placed so casually and mixed with wine? Can locusts and sparrows be interested in wine? Jinyuan, have you ever caught fish? Wine can stimulate the scent of bait and spread far. It's like telling locusts that there's delicious food here, come here quickly. Xianxia said angrily, are you questioning my professionalism in hunting? Isn't your major in alchemy? Jinyuan was speechless. Suddenly, in the distance, a dark cloud appeared in the sky, and a large swarm of locusts and sparrows flew towards them with a clatter. Did you really come? Jinyuan was somewhat surprised. That's nature, Xianxia said proudly. As the saying goes, people die for wealth and birds die for food. If locusts and sparrows cannot eat more and accumulate more energy during this season, winter will be difficult to endure. Their instinctive reaction is difficult to resist the temptation of food. This is like many humans, even though they know there are huge risks, they still have a hot-headed pursuit of money. Jojo. The leader locust sparrow let out a scream and did not immediately fly towards the tempting food. Instead, he commanded the group of locusts to fly around the spiritual field and grain-drying field twice, as if checking for some traps. Subsequently, the leader locust sparrow fluttered its wings and hovered in the air, glancing at the grain-drying field with 2 contemptuous chirps, as if somewhat disdainful. 2 leader-level locust sparrows heard the command and descended from the sky, suddenly flapping their wings. Some of the laid-out spiritual rice flew out in an instant, and at the same time, with 2 loud explosions, 2 iron clips hidden under the spiritual rice bounced and closed together. They repeated their old tricks, constantly destroying the iron trap. Animal. Chen Jingfei's heart lit up, and he immediately rushed forward with the tenant farmer's guards, wanting to drive out the locusts and sparrows. But the leader locust sparrow chirped twice, and then a leader locust sparrow led a team of locust sparrows to rush towards the guard, entangled and isolated them outside the grain-drying field. The leader locust sparrow personally dismounted and flew down. With its steel claws, it caught a white hemp rope in the sun-drying field and lifted it up in the air. Behind it was a large hidden bird-catching net. Its strength was so great that it dragged the large net aside and threw it to the ground, emitting more than 10 wind blades, cutting it into flying pieces. After finishing all of this, the leader of the locust sparrow flapped his wings and proudly made a series of chirps to the guards such as Chen Jingfei. That's like saying, "Stupid humans. Do you think these simple traps can handle this king? We have enjoyed the bait. As for the trap, you can keep it for yourself to play with such an appearance, it really looks very arrogant and deserving of beating. It's like a fish, mocking anglers for raising it in their nests. It is indeed a habitual locust sparrow." Even Jinyuan, who was on duty at the night cabin, couldn't resist his impulse and wanted to give him a golden light blade to taste the pain. At the same time, a few locusts couldn't resist the temptation of food and rushed to the grain-drying field. They started eating big mouthfuls and started to chase and play with each other. "It's going to be a while." The leader of the grasshoppers saw that the few grasshoppers had no adverse reactions after eating their food, so they landed on the grain-drying field and indulged in the fragrant aged rice. The other locusts and sparrows also rushed forward and began to desperately compete for the limited spiritual rice. Eating and eating, the locusts and sparrows did not notice that on the grain-drying field, a light and thin cover plate had been moved, and among them was a tempting white jade spirit rice with white flowers exposed. The red-eyed locusts and sparrows immediately rushed forward, accelerating their pace to compete and eat. Even the leader of the locust sparrow couldn't escape, as it relied on its authority and size to grab and eat the most. Such a scene. Chen Jinyuan sighed in a low voice and said, "Indeed, birds die for food. The same goes for humans. I should reflect on it. Miss Xianxia, good technique." Chen Daoyuan also gave a thumbs up and praised Wang Xianxian, using several obvious traps one after another to reduce the alertness of locusts and sparrows, making them complacent and ignoring the final trump card. Unexpectedly, Miss Xianxian is still a good hunter. Uncle C praised me. Wang Xianxian smiled humbly and shyly. "As a casual cultivator, I walk in the realm of cultivation. I can touch a fish, know how to hunt and improve my food. This is very reasonable." Fourth uncle. Chen Jingyun's eyelids twitched, and Wang Xianxian's face was indeed so thick that it was outrageous. His ability to climb up the pole was really impressive. At this moment. Bark. Bark. Some smaller locusts and sparrows, unable to withstand the power of the Zui San medicine, all weakened and collapsed on the grain-drying field. Jojo. The leader of the locust sparrow suddenly woke up and fell into a trap. It quickly flapped its wings and swept towards the sky. "I don't feel like I'm not flying yet. With this flight, I feel like my wings are weak, and my whole body feels like I've been pulled out of my bones and can't stand up." But it is ultimately a knowledgeable old bird, with strong strength. It mustered up its energy and ran for its life, creating a crooked flight path in the air. It hasn't flown several miles yet. There were two young people, a man and a woman, each using flying magic tools to block the whereabouts of the locust leader. Zhaoshuyuan.com. Run, you keep running. Wang Qianqian sat on the paper kite and looked at the leader of the locust sparrow with a smile. "Didn't you be quite arrogant just now? Why didn't you be so arrogant? How does my drunken powder taste?" "Jio, the leader of the locust sparrow screamed angrily, as if condemning the despicable cunning of humans, but his head was still scorched black. Without that majestic red hair, his momentum was somewhat lacking. What are you talking nonsense about with a bird? Jinyuan lifted his palm, and in the dazzling golden light, he knocked out the leader of the Locust Sparrow. When the leader of the Locust Sparrow woke up again, the willow branches were already on the moon. It twisted its round and bulging body and found that its numbness had dissipated. Its head was still dull, but a pair of wings were tied up by roots and tilted upwards, unable to close. If this posture is seen by its subordinates, wouldn't it lose its dignified face as a Sparrow King? By the way, where are the subordinates of the Sparrow King? What about the second, third, and fourth leaders of this king? Wait. What fragrance! The leader of the Locust Sparrow tilted his head to take a closer look. After seeing the situation clearly, the entire sparrow froze on the spot and its soul flew out. Not far away, there was a bonfire set up, and several human beings were gathered around it, chatting and laughing while eating barbecue. The roasted bird strung on the branch, judging from its size, is clearly Sandungjia. Third, you died so miserably. I want to avenge you, I will fight hard. Pop. Xianxia slapped the leader of the Locust Sparrow to the ground and swallowed the waterway, saying, Chen Gongzi, what are you keeping this big fat bird for? It's a rare first-order ferocious bird, it's a great supplement to its diet.